And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining our platform today, where we are exposing the rhinos in the state legislature, advancing the cause of constitutional conservatism, and slowly but surely, day by day, draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom. Welcome, everybody. I hope you are having a fantastic week. We are coming to you with the Endorsement series again, and we know that only one or two of these interviews pertain directly to your voting decisions, but please keep listening. It's so important that we get the right people elected. We know that every single vote and every single member affects the way that we live our lives going forward. So please, if you know people who live in the district and it's not your district, share the episode with them. As a reminder, we do have shorts on YouTube and on Rumble. So those are ways that you can kind of get people's attention, especially if they don't have a lot of time. They're short 1 or 2 minute clips that just kind of give a little sneak peek of the candidates. So hopefully that will be a good tool for you. And today we are continuing the series, as I mentioned, with a leader, a battle-tested warrior, and a patriot who does not suffer fools, the one and only Alan Seabaugh. He's running for state senate in District 31. Before we get to Alan, let me read the scripture of the day. Today it's Psalm 9, verses 6 through 10, and it says, "The Lord thundered, and our enemies have been cut off, vanished in everlasting ruins. All their cities have been destroyed. Even the memory of them has been erased. But Yahweh, our mighty God, reigns forever. He sits enthroned as king, ready to render his verdicts and judge all with righteousness. He will issue his decrees of judgment, deciding what is right for the entire world, dispensing justice to all. All who are oppressed may come to Yahweh as a high shelter in the time of trouble, a perfect hiding place. For everyone who knows your wonderful name keeps putting their trust in you. They can count on you for help no matter what. O Lord, you will never, no, never neglect those who come to you." And I just love this because God is not oblivious to the attacks of the enemy against us. He sees the perversions of justice. He sees the suffering of his people, and he will render judgment. And I believe that we're in a moment in history where we are about to see with our own eyes and experience with our own lives the justice of the Lord. We know that everyone who does not know Jesus as Savior will face eternal judgment. And a lot of people talk about judgment being sometime in the distant future. But I really believe that we will see justice on earth as well, and we will get to be a part of it.
We will see justice on earth and hopefully some measure of justice on October 14th when hopeful Senator Alan Seabaugh is elected, along with a number of other constitutional conservatives, to the Senate. And when the judgment comes, or whenever the end of the world comes, I know that the Lord will find people like Alan Seabaugh sitting and working and advancing the cause of constitutional conservatism and freedom on this earth. What a pleasure to have him with us this morning to talk for a few minutes about his campaign. Alan, how are you today?
I'm doing great this morning. How are y'all?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on.
I'm glad to do it. Thank you for having me.
Alan, I got to ask you this straight out of the box, because we have been hearing that the powers that be, state and national, may be trying at some point to lock us down again. I'm asking you this particular question because I know as a state representative back in 2020, you led the charge to challenge the governor's emergency lockdown and get this state reopened to relieve the broad-scale suffering of Louisiana citizens. Talk a little bit about what happened in 2020 when you tried to get this state reopened, and what your response will be as a state senator if they try to lower the boom on us again.
All right. That whole episode in 2020 was one of the most frustrating things that I had to deal with in my time in the legislature. You know, we had a governor who was basically shutting down churches and businesses and leaving the abortion clinics and the casinos open. There was a lot wrong with what happened in 2020. The whole mandate, the whole shutdown, everything should never have happened. Fortunately, in Louisiana, Woody Jenkins, about 30 years ago, took care of it and had a provision in there that said either house of the legislature with a majority vote can end any state of emergency, which is fairly clear. It's fairly simple in the law and it's fairly clear. I thought it would be a fairly easy thing to do to get 53 representatives to sign a petition ending the state of emergency. I was very, very wrong. Clay Shakespeare, first of all, I went to the Senate. The Senate did not want to talk about it. Page Cortez, his infinite wisdom, decided that a one-house petition to end it would be unconstitutional, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. The fact of the matter is, it's backwards. That's what happens when you have a furniture salesman trying to read the Constitution. You have the Constitution gives the legislature all legislative authority. The provision in the state of emergency, the legislature gives up that authority to the governor, which is itself extra constitutional. So there has to be a clawback provision. Any delegation of legislative authority to the executive without a clawback provision is itself unconstitutional. So the legislature making the clawback provision easier makes it more likely to pass constitutional muster, not less. Either way, the logic of requiring both houses to do it was simply a way of protecting John Bell and trying to keep the legislature from stepping on the governor's toes. The Senate fought it hook, line, and sinker, and we never, ever did get a single senator to ever sign the petition.
Let me stop you there for just a second, Alan, and take the Senate out of it for a second. In your chamber, in the House, as you said, you needed 53 signatures, majority vote, and you worked diligently and passionately to get this signature with a majority Republican, maybe even a 2/3 majority in the House of Representatives in 20. Why was that not done summarily? What kind of resistance did you meet with?
We had a Republican delegation meeting in the Capitol a couple of weeks into the lockdown. And Shake Snyder, the Speaker of the House, stood up and basically said, we're not going to do that. Anybody that signs the petition is going to be basically punished, which is why I didn't release the list of people who signed publicly, because I didn't want the patriots who actually did the right thing to face retribution from the newly elected speaker. So we got somewhere in the low 40s. We were never near 53. We got in the low 40s, but people were scared. And some people who signed when Shake Snyder started threatening retribution, they started trying to back off. There was no will to do anything other than kowtow to the governor coming from Shake Snyder and Cortez. I mean, Speaker of the House and President of the Senate basically said, we're going to follow the governor's lead. We're not going to buck him. We're not going to stand in the way. And they came up with some ridiculous arguments. The 2/3, the requiring both houses, that's just something that somebody made up that has absolutely no basis in law anywhere. The other thing that they came up with was that it would somehow prevent the governor from calling an emergency declaration if there was a hurricane. Again, equally ignorant. Emergency declaration for a public health emergency is completely different section of law than a natural disaster. So suspending a specific emergency declaration related to a public health emergency can in no way ever be related to a natural disaster emergency declaration. They're in completely different statutes, and anybody that presents that argument is really just highlighting the fact that they don't know how to read the law and they don't understand how it works. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of people in the legislature who don't read the law and don't know how it works. When you have somebody standing up and saying that, what you have is a bunch of sheep who want to follow the leader, not do anything that would upset leadership. So we never did get the signatures. And basically, if you look at the conservative caucus, that's basically who signed. Not exactly, but really close. But we never did get there. And then until like September, Nick Snyder finally did his own petition, but did it in a way that it was destined to fail. It was only after he did that that people like Buddy Vincey and some of the other weaklings actually stepped up to sign. It was only when Clay said, okay, we're going to do it this way. But the fact is, he did it wrong and it went to court. They again, all I can say is they handled everything completely wrong. And the judge, by the way, is retired, but the judge was completely off his rocker.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is that when Schneider finally did try to take some kind of action, it was month after month after month. Louisiana citizens continued to suffer this because you were trying to do this in June and July. He doesn't come in till late September and tries to do something. But the point here, Alan, is that 9-10 votes short on your petition to get to the 53 votes, and because of Republican rhinos. And we've talked recently about some of those rhinos and making sure that our listeners across the state understand specifically which of these incumbents who are running for reelection did absolutely nothing to stand up in the face of that despotism by our governor.
Yes. And I have a hard time believing that it was ignorance, Alan. I just think, I mean, we have seen and you have experienced up close and personal. So your take is a lot better than mine. But this outgoing leadership has carried the dirty laundry of the governor this whole entire time. And the fact that they are ignorant, I don't think is an excuse. I think that they probably did it by design. I think that they wanted it to fail and they were marching to the tune of the governor.
I agree. If they were ignorant, they were willfully ignorant.
Yeah.
The truth was out there. It was easy to find and frankly not that difficult to understand. The fact, to your point, the fact is they didn't want to, and they came up with a fairly flimsy excuse and a basis to oppose. Again, I agree. I don't think they were actually ignorant. I think they wanted to be ignorant because they didn't want to do anything. So they came up with the best excuse they could find and hid behind it.
Yeah. You mentioned, Alan, that the Senate didn't want to even look at it. You got 40-something signatures in your chamber. Great credit to you on your petition. You came reasonably close to getting it done on your side. And you said the Senate didn't want to listen at all to it. And which brings me to this point. A number of legislators have told us that the Senate is all too often a place where good legislation goes to die, which to me is the strongest argument I can think of for why the Senate needs more people like you. Valerie Hodges, Blake Miguez, Randy Bush running out there in 37. Talk to us a little bit about the state of the Senate now and why it is so important that not only that you get elected to serve in the Senate, but that we get more constitutional conservatives on that side of the Capitol.
Well, we're not going to fix the state of Louisiana until we fix the Senate. The House of Representatives has been fairly conservative since I got there. I was there 13 years. They were always leading the charge, always on the more conservative end. And the description used of the Senate being where good bills go to die, that has been the case. The governor can control the Senate more than he can control the House. I've served under two governors, Bobby Jindal and John Bel Edwards. They both controlled the legislature by controlling the Senate. And I'll give you a good example. In 2020, during the shutdown, and we were just talking about the petition, we also had a couple of hurricanes. The governor likes to get his National Guard helicopter and fly over the flooded areas for the hurricane. They would actually tell, of course, House members don't usually get invited, but they told senators and House members, you can't fly on the helicopter unless you commit to not sign the petition to end the lockdown. They were actually using the natural disaster and hurricane as a way of making sure that people didn't sign the petition and didn't try to reopen the state. So, and senators, they really want to fly on that helicopter. So they were kowtowing to the governor's demand. Instead of doing what was right by their constituents, they threw their constituents under the bus for a ride on the helicopter. And that's really, really disgusting.
Alan, what can we do to lessen the powers of the governor? Because he seems to run roughshod over the legislature year after year.
Well, and he does. I mean, decentralizing power from back is a constitutional challenge. But the easier thing to do is elect a good governor that won't do that.
Yeah.
And I feel fairly comfortable that we're about to do that. I don't think we're going to be having these conversations for the next 8 years. But Louisiana constitutions were written for centralizing power in Baton Rouge, giving the governor power of appointments. And what governors have done is use those appointments. They put governors do that sort of thing. They give jobs, they give appointments. It's not straight up robbery, but it's kind of it.
Pretty close.
Yeah, some of them pay really well. Some of them have really good perks, and people want those positions for their family members. And again, with 39 senators, you really, some are going to be with you ideologically. So with looking at John Bell, he's got 12 Democrats. So he really only needs about 8 to 10 Republicans. And it's not that hard for the government to put certain things in place. People have pet projects they want.
And frankly, Alan, some legislators have suffered as a result of standing up to the governor with regard to busting the spending cap and standing strong. And some of them have suffered by having some of their projects and some of their essential funding canceled because they stood up to him. And one is the Lions Club. It's just unbelievable. In Chuck Owen's district, the Lions Club has been there for many, many years, and it is a camp for disabled children. And John Bell Edwards retaliated against Chuck Owen, redlining that program, which I think is absolutely reprehensible.
Well, yeah, it's despicable. And so there's a couple of areas in North Carolina that had very much needed water projects to provide the drinking water for communities that got vetoed because their representative stood up to the government. When you veto funding for disabled kids, you're just a reprehensible person. And that's really what we're dealing with here. So from that point, you got, that's not the way it's supposed to work. That is the way it's designed in Louisiana. So I do think we need to start top to bottom of restructuring how government is set up in Louisiana, how it's administered, and how it's pursued, because it's centralized in Congress, but it's also centralized in the executive branch more than the legislative. A really good example of executive power over legislative. Use the federal example. In 1990, Clinton president, Republicans take the House and the Senate for the first time in a very long time. So they pushed through under Newt Gingrich as Speaker. They pushed through some welfare reform. That was one of the big victories of Republicans during the Clinton administration was welfare reform. They put in work requirements for welfare reform. So those are still on the books and they've never been repealed, but they're non-existent now. And so you ask yourself, wait, how did that happen? That law never got repealed. What happened is Obama came in and under the Administrative Act, they just redefined work. The statute says you have to work for so many months to qualify for welfare. So Obama, under the Administrative Procedures Act, redefined work to include things like applying for jobs, or at one point even exercising regularly. If you him, you qualify for welfare.
Just redefine the terms.
Yes, they didn't change the law; they changed what the words meant. And so that's a problem. I mean, it's a problem of strict constructionism of statutes. You have to interpret the statute based on the general meanings of the words at the time the statute was passed, not what they mean now. And so that's a problem. And very, very few people, few legal scholars, few judges, fewer legislators actually understand that distinction. And it's fairly difficult, but executives like Obama and John Bell Edwards are really good at using the Administrative Procedures Act and redefining the word. So they changed the law without ever passing the bill. And it's really not the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah. Speaking, Alan, of having a grasp of the issues and understanding some of the critical concerns of Louisiana citizens, including the voters up in District 31 where you're running, what are a couple of the primary concerns that the voters there are expressing to you? And also, what are some of the primary concerns that you think Louisiana citizens as a whole face going into the new cycle and the new session?
Well, I think the problems that Northwest Louisiana faces are pretty similar to the problems faced throughout the rest of the state. First and foremost, to me, and the one that gets brought up the most is jobs and the economy. We're tired of seeing our family members have to move to Dallas, or Houston, or Atlanta, or somewhere else just for you paying up. My only grandchild lives in Dallas. That's not the way it's supposed to work. Louisiana needs jobs. And there's a fairly simple way to do that. We need to not have a government and a legislature who are trying to tax businesses into oblivion. We need to be giving them tax incentives and tax breaks so that they will invest in Louisiana and create jobs. That's fairly easy. Well, another thing that affects everybody is crime, education. Those are problems where Louisiana is at the bottom of all the lists you want to be at the top of. One, I think, that is slightly worse up here than the rest of the state is roads. And I know roads are bad everywhere, but Northwest Louisiana and all these rural roads, which I'm traveling regularly for the last year and a half while I'm campaigning, these roads are terrible.
Yeah, I can attest to that, being from Shreveport. I can certainly attest to that.
Well, one day I was out putting up signs, and I had my big signs in the bed of my truck, and I got to the last location. I was pulling the last sign out, and when I did, I realized that my tailgate had fallen off my truck.
Oh my gosh.
Because I had it open. I had the tailgate open because the signs were big. And I remembered hitting a pothole that rattled my teeth. And I said, I think I know where that tailgate is. And I doubled back and I found it. Rural Natchitoches Parish. I found my tailgate.
Oh my gosh. That's rough, Alan. That's really rough. I complain about not being able to drink coffee and drive down the road, but that's next level.
Yeah.
That's what you call paying the price on the trail, Alan. You're paying the price out there, buddy. That is some good stuff. Let me ask you this, Alan, and this is an important question. I think Scott McKay or you or somebody mentioned this at the Freedom Caucus dinner the other night. A number of states have abolished the state income tax. We are taxed so badly in this state. You can even tax under the franchise provision. You can tax people for borrowing money to start a business. You got to pay the loan back. But Lord, they're taxing money that you borrow to try to build a dream and start a business. What are your thoughts on abolishing the income tax altogether in Louisiana?
Well, if we don't abolish it, we have to at least reduce it to make us competitive with our neighboring states. It's something that we need to do because, look, the fact of the matter is the federal government treats business the same in every state. The businesses are going to move to states with more attractive tax structures. And you can look, I'm sitting here right now. I'm about 15 or 20 miles from Texas. If we're trying to recruit business to move to Northwest Louisiana, and they can go 20 miles to the west and not have personal or corporate income tax. It's really difficult for us to get them to give Louisiana a second look. And if you want people moving to your state, you need businesses creating jobs in your state. And the best way to do that is make the state more attractive from a tax standpoint. If you look across the nation, $100 billion, billion for the B, of investment has left high tax states like California, New Jersey, New York, and Illinois. But it has not come to Louisiana. It's all moved to the south. It's gone to Texas. It's gone to Florida, North Carolina. But it has not come into Louisiana. We've got to make ourselves more attractive. And it's from a tax standpoint, we've got to start there. Now, you have to look at it. Government does need money. You have three choices. You have sales tax, you have income tax, and you have property.
Danielle, didn't somebody tell us yesterday or a couple of days ago, one of the candidates we interviewed, that there's an annual out-migration rate in Louisiana of somewhere between 50 and 70,000 people? Or is that the total number?
No, I think that is an annual number, 70,000.
I think that's about right. And we're the only southern state that more people are moving out of than into. The only one. And it's because of government. Louisiana has a lot to offer. We have natural resources. We have culture. We have some really cool things in this state that make it a fun place to live. But we're the state that people are moving out of. And the only reason we're at the bottom of all those lists you want to be at the top of is because of our government.
Yeah.
We have great natural resources, great people. We don't have great government. And that's something that shame on us if we don't fix.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to ask you this, Alan. Let's shift gears for just a second and talk about your race coming up October 14th. As we said earlier, running District 31 Senate District. I looked at your opponent's website earlier today, and one of the first things you see on his website is strong conservative. We don't know too much about him. How would you, for our listeners, distinguish yourself from your opponent and provide a basis for them to choose you over your opponent in this election?
Well, in a nutshell, I can say when I tell you that I'm a conservative, I actually know what that means. I don't think he does. He was put in this race by trial lawyers and Democrats who don't want me in the Senate. And that's not really a deniable fact. He's raised about $300,000, almost all of it from trial lawyers all over the state and labor unions. And then he says, yes, I was being fully funded by trial lawyers, labor unions, and Democrats, but I'm going to go to bat and be a conservative. And he knows absolutely nothing. He can't answer a question. He goes to forums and people ask him questions, and he has no idea. He's come out so far. He said he voted for John Bel Edwards. I can assure you I did not. He does not support President Trump. I do. He's, again, supported by trial lawyers. I'm not. They asked him about a concealed carry, and he said, I can't answer that right now. They asked him about lowering auto insurance rates. He said, I don't have an answer for you. On and on and on. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I haven't thought about that. On and on and on. No matter what the issue is, he simply doesn't know, because what he does know is coaching basketball. And he doesn't know anything about the issues facing Louisiana. He's never created a job. He's been a government employee his entire life. He's never created a job. He's never made a payroll. He's never had to not take a paycheck so he could pay his employees. He has no idea what it's like. And he has no idea how to pass a bill, how to fund a road, how to do a road project, or anything else. What he is a quote unquote nice guy who was a basketball coach for a long time, who is supported by people who don't want to see change in Louisiana. And what you've got is a group of people who don't want Louisiana to get better. They don't want to see the next governor succeed. They certainly don't want tort reform. They don't want business reform. They don't want tax reform. And they're putting up milquetoast, quote unquote, Republicans like my opponent, who was not a Republican before he got in the race. In fact, he originally, the first interview he gave when he got in the race, he said he was a political independent and was going to run as an independent. He has switched to Republican purely because his handlers told him he couldn't get elected as an independent. And so it's really what you're dealing with is, look, I'm a proven conservative. I've been there for 13 years. I'm chairman of the Freedom Caucus. I was chairman of the Conservative Caucus, probably have the most consistently conservative voting record in Baton Rouge. And I've been the one standing in the gap, standing up against higher taxes, standing up against wasteful spending, standing up against the trial lawyers, standing up against John Bel. Several times I was the only one that would go to the floor and point out the fact that John Bel was being less than truthful with the people of Louisiana, some of the things he was asking. And sometimes it was lonely. Sometimes it was kind of fun because we actually had more victories than you would expect with the numbers stacked against us the way we did. But a consistently conservative voting record, but also consistently conservative leadership record in what I've done. And so with me, you know what you're going to get. And I'm whatever the opposite of a rhino is, that would be me. And my opponent, quite frankly, is the very definition of a rhino.
Yeah. One of the things, Alan, that we were particularly gratified by, our group and our listeners across the state and LeCAG members, was SCR 21, Stuart Cathy's Senate concurrent resolution that simply declares Louisiana's solemn constitutional right to nullify unconstitutional federal acts. People across Louisiana are so afraid of federal overreach, and for very good reason, executive overreach, particularly in light of recent history with these lockdowns and so forth. And the fact that you carried on the House side and were able to secure passage of a solemn resolution declaring Louisiana's right to nullify federal tyranny is something that the voters in your district must know about and have to know about. And we applaud you for your efforts. Secondly, I wanted to mention to you, we don't have time for on-the-job training. We don't have time for nice people. I hope everybody's nice. I like nice people. But our legislature needs fighters and warriors. We're in a battle for the soul of our state and our country. And nice guys are simply not going to cut it anymore.
That's a fact. I mean, I like to think I'm nice, but some people may disagree. If you disagree with me, and you're my opponent in court or in the legislature, maybe I'm not that nice because I'm not afraid to stand up for my constituents, for my values, and for the good people of Louisiana. I'm not going to back down just to be nice. I'm going to do what my constituents sent me there to do, and I'm going to do what the good people of Louisiana need me to do. So that's one of those. Nice is a nice term, but it has its place. The fact of the matter is, we're going to jump in early 2024. We're going to need to hit the ground running. And we have some very big decisions that are going to have to be made. Are we going to need a constitutional convention to completely restructure the way Louisiana is set up? I think we do. And we're going to have that conversation. And it's not going to be a comfortable conversation for a lot of people, but I don't think it's avoidable. We're going to have to address crime. We're going to have to address insurance, which is the same as addressing tort reform. With the insurance crisis that we're having in Louisiana, and auto insurance, property insurance, at every level of the insurance market, the last thing we need to do is send a bunch of trial lawyers and trial lawyer candidates to Baton Rouge who are going to block true insurance reform, which is exactly what they did in 2020. The good bill that was actually going to lower insurance rates didn't pass. Snyder, actually, the first time it didn't pass, the second time it did, and John Bell vetoed it. And then Snyder stepped up and said, we're going to do this lip service bill, a bill written by trial lawyers for trial lawyers, simply to take the issue off the table. That way we can say we did something, but never actually had any intention of lowering insurance rates, so we could just stop talking about it for 4 years.
Yeah, and in fact, did not do anything to lower insurance rates. Before we let you go, and I'll let Danielle close it out with you, but how do people get in touch with you to donate to your campaign, to find out more about you, and so forth?
All right. My website is alanseabaugh.com. And you're welcome to call me. It's 318-200-0160. You can donate on the website. Just click the donate button. And again, the phone number is 318-200-0160. The website is Alan, A-L-A-N, Seabaugh, SEABAUGH.com. That can at least get you started. More than welcome to email me, call me. I'll talk to anybody at any time. Louisiana is I hate to say Louisiana is a crossroads, because it sounds like a cliche, but we're actually at the end of our road. If we don't turn this thing around, we're about to go off the cliff, and it may not be fixable. And we can't go any further down this road.
Yeah. Alan, just as a last question, I couldn't let this opportunity pass me by, but earlier this week, or recently, I'm losing track of my days, but we were reading over some email exchange between you and Buddy Mincy during the COVID lockdowns. And I recall that you suggested and highly encouraged him to find his big boy pants. So I'm just wondering, on average, roughly, if you had to put a number to it, how many times did you have to encourage your colleagues to find their big boy pants?
Buddy's the only one that suggested needs to look for his big boy pants. But, when you run for the legislature, you win a contested election, you get elected, and you expect people not to ask you to do anything, you might be coming into it with the wrong idea of what public service is. He really was under the impression that anybody asking him to actually do anything was attacking him. And that's why I said, you need to put your big boy pants on, accept some responsibility, because your constituents have invested you with some responsibility.
Yeah.
Put your big boy pants on and start doing what your constituents sent you to Baton Rouge to do. Probably the worst example of that in the legislature this year. There were a lot of people who objected to reopening, objected to signing the petition, but none did it with quite the vigor as Buddy Mincy.
Nobody chafed under the suggestion that his constituents would actually make demands upon him the way Buddy Mincy did. And I'm still waiting for Buddy, and hopefully he will respond, because in one exchange with you, he indicated that he had bigger fish to fry, taller issues to deal with rather than getting our state reopened. I'd like to know what some of those issues were. But Alan, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. We are supporting you so gratified to endorse you in your run. The Senate in our state needs you very, very badly. We need more Seabaughs, more Miguez's, more Hodges. We need people like you in there. Keep up the good work hard, finish strong, and hopefully we'll be celebrating on October 14th. And God bless you.
Thank you much. I appreciate y'all very much. Anytime.
Thanks, Alan. Have a great day.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Chris, he knows the issues inside and out, doesn't he?
Yeah, if we will sit here and talk about all of the things that Alan has done in 13 years in the legislature to protect our sovereignty and our freedom, to advance the cause of constitutional conservatism, literally we could devote 4, 5, 6 shows to it. He is a true leader. And I don't think there's any choice up in District 31. Alan should win that race and win it handily, not only because he is a tremendous conservative power and influence in the legislature, but because he has a track record to demonstrate it. He's not just talking, he's walked the walk. And we look for people who've walked the walk.
Yeah, and he stands up to the governor. He's not afraid of telling people like it is. And that's something that is really, really hard to come by, has been hard to come by. I think we're seeing a few strong people stand up and run this election cycle, probably more than we've seen in the past, a very good number. But Alan just stands out to me because he has done it. He has stood alone. He's been the cheese that stood alone and fought for the people, and he's done it consistently. This isn't an election year game for him.
Not at all. He has demonstrated it. And if there's any cause, any candidate, any campaign that wants support, financial support, moral support, every kind of support that can be offered, it's Seabaugh's campaign. And I want to remind our listeners, first of all, thank everyone for their donations to the LeCag PAC. Please continue to donate to the LeCag PAC because we use those resources to advance candidates across the state, just like Alan Seabaugh, so that we can return our legislature to the citizens who for too long have felt voiceless and ignored. And that's what the LeCag PAC is all about. And quite frankly, Danielle, that's what the state of freedom is all about.
It is. And if people want to support the work that we're doing here and help make what we're doing sustainable, you can support us at freedomstate.us. If you wanted to send us something by mail, you can do that at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. That's Bourg, Louisiana. And just some reminders, Chris, for folks. We've gotten an encouragement from one of our friends and listeners to encourage people to sign up to be poll watchers. You know, we've had this election integrity series. It's been something that we both feel strongly about, that the drumbeat has continued behind the scenes, and we don't want people to think that we have forgotten about election integrity now that we've turned our attentions to the actual election. So please sign up to be poll watchers. I believe the deadline is October 2nd, and you can get a form to do that on the Secretary of State website. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. Also, another announcement, I guess, is that We the People Bayou community, which I'm a part of, we're hosting an election integrity event on September 21st in Houma at the Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Rifle Range. If you're interested in that, we'll put some links to that as well in the show notes to the We the People Facebook page, so you can get all the details on that. It'll be the evening of September 21st from 6:30 to 8:30. So we welcome you to come and join us at that event and learn more about the state of election integrity, the fight for election integrity in Louisiana, and there will also be a demonstration of the hand-marked paper ballots counting. So I think that's all for my housekeeping notes today, Chris.
Beautiful. That is so beautiful. Danielle, the State of Freedom is rapidly building a platform across the state that is revolutionizing political advocacy in the state of Louisiana. The sharing, the subscribing, the donations to the State of Freedom increase our infrastructure and help us to continue to build our presence across Louisiana so that we can offer a platform and a voice to constitutional conservatives who want to serve. And in so doing, we're equalizing the playing field. And if we continue to do this every day, we will preserve the state of freedom in Louisiana.
God bless you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to The State of Freedom, LLC at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.